Is there such a thing as too much luck? Is there such a thing as too much fun? Messing around, wondering how it's taken so long. I'm really so strong. It's not too much at all.
Welcome, everybody. Today we are doing something a little bit different. You requested this episode about the brain of a non-procrastinator, and so I brought in my favorite neuroplasticity expert, Amina Zamani, who helped us in an earlier episode about regulating our nervous system. So she is back because we are talking about how to map the brain and how to map our motivation. Welcome, Amina. So happy to have you
Oh
back.
my God, there's nobody better to model about execution than you, like hands down. So let's fucking go.
Flattered and honored. This was really fun and a very big treat for me to learn more about myself. So thank you, Amina, for taking the time and being willing to use me as a case study for everybody else so they can learn a little bit about themselves and the brain. So let's start at the very beginning. How does one even begin to start to map the brain?
Yeah, totally. First of all, I just want to say, like, I was super fascinated to do what's called a neurological model. Neurological model is basically assessing neuromotivation, like what gets somebody to act, like who's excellent at something and can we map that across, map it to something that you're maybe not good at, and hopefully others can emulate it. And I just noticed in our friendship, in our projects that we've done together, like you've just been such a killer at getting shit done. Like nobody has to tell you twice. And so like I approached, just for context, I approached Denise and I was like, hey, like, let me do a little neuro modeling on you, like be my guinea pig. And so in November, I interviewed her a bunch and created a little bit of a roadmap, and it sounds like your audience was super stoked about it. So, like, I guess that's why we're here to give you some context about modeling. Basically, we've been modeling our whole life. We've been modeling the emotions and reactions of our parents and making meaning out of it. Now, what neuroscience is suggesting is that we stop modeling emotion unconsciously and we start consciously mapping someone's behavior, not copying them, but mapping the sequence. And that's modeling.
Yeah. And so we're going to break down a little more for you in a little bit here what this sequence is that we discovered about me. And we'll use this as a deeper look into the science. And then obviously, if you have
Yeah.
curiosity about your own brain map, you can always reach out to Amina. But I think this is something that for me is also really helpful because everyone who knows me knows if I say I'm going to do something, it is done. It is done. It is done immediately or in 24 hours. And I know that's not entirely normal. And so it was interesting to learn about why I am that way. And I'm sure some of the sort of oldest daughters or people that grew up a little bit too quickly will relate to this archetype. And hopefully it brings some color and helps you maybe understand why you might be that way as well.
Yeah, totally.
And for my
Yeah.
people that struggle with execution, maybe this gives you a little information and how to build better neural pathways to get to more execution. What I want to say before we begin, which we will get into later, is just to clarify to everybody there is a positive and negative side to all these types of behaviors. And we will talk a little more about why this is a bit of a trauma response for me, a bit of a survival pathway that I chose. And that doesn't necessarily mean just because it's been something that's worked well for me, I'm in a phase now where I'm actually trying to change that a little bit. And so we'll get into that. Just want to clarify for everybody. There's always like sort of a good and bad side to each of these traits.
Yeah. And I like totally, there's a shadow to anything that we're good at. I totally agree with you. That is absolutely true. But I think there's some value in distilling the magic and the goodness. And I think a lot of times people don't fully understand what modeling is. Like, I may butcher this example, but I heard this really simple example of what modeling is. Like, imagine that there are two kids building Lego towers, and kid one is like doing a bang up job. They're fucking killing it. Like that tower is staying and it's working. And kid two can't get it to stay. So like an adult might be like, what's wrong? Focus, do better, do more. And modeling says, don't work harder. Watch what watch what the kid does who's doing well. For example, he may build a wider base. He may move slowly. He may pause or stop when the tower wobbles. So we don't say copy the tower. We say copy the sequence, copy the structure. And that's modeling. And for you, like you've developed a phenomenal strategy of execution. And whether it's driven from fear or trauma or whatever, we can still extract the goodness and
Yes.
and teach people how to map that and emulate that, right? For some people that have such a hard time executing, we don't want to tell them like work harder, focus more, because that's not the issue. The number one thing that I
Okay.
got from doing a neurological model for Denise Hewitt is this. Denise Hewitt has attached tremendous safety to getting things done. Your nervous system attached a tremendous amount of like dopamine, motivation, identity, reward through completion. There are some people that cannot get things done, not because they're stupid or unmotivated or lazy, none of that. They were not rewarded in the same way. For example, some people
Yeah.
that have really a hard time getting things done may have been really pressurized around getting things done. Maybe they were criticized, so they'd rather hide. You know, in my belief system, I don't think anyone is inherently lazy or stupid.
Yeah.
We have,
No, we're so
yeah,
conditioned
exactly.
by our families, by the people around us, by our life experiences. And so let's talk about that a little bit. So for me, my origin story is I have two siblings and I have two parents. And my family story was both my siblings just needed more from my parents. And so I learned over time that if I just was good, like did the right thing and was a good student and had extracurriculars, that that was the best role for me to play in my family to sort of alleviate my mother of more stress, largely because my dad commuted a lot for work. She had a lot of pressure on herself, and there were three kids she was juggling by herself. And so I learned to get out of the way. And so when we talk about execution, for me, there was a level of that is I am most seen and loved when I'm getting out of the way and I'm getting things done.
Yeah. When that's totally accurate. And it's interesting because when we're kids, like our brains are just so open. We're like in a hypnotic state constantly. So, like, our brains are like wide open. So, everything that comes in, particularly when it's attached with emotion or reward or trauma, gets in there. So, every part of your body learned that execution, doing things, completing things meant you were safe. And what you shared with me actually personally was super interesting. You said, in so many words, that you regulated through being the steady one. So when there was a lot of fucking chaos happening in your family, people were having difficulty, maybe people couldn't get things done, you were the one that could come in and get it done. You were the one that could complete it. You were the one that could solve it. That creates such an identity association of I am here, my voice matters, and I can only rest if I complete, you know? Like,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
and that's why you particularly are so, so good at getting things done. Now, the other side of that is like you've now built a foundation and safety to be like, hey, like I don't just loop through safety by getting things done. Like I can also have safety and rest. I can also have safety and not get it done or be the regulator for everyone, right? But the safety thing is very, very important. Like, basically, if you don't want to rewire your brain, I say this all the time, like, don't seek safety, don't seek nervous system regulation. And when we're kids, we make so much meaning out of things. And the meaning you made up is like, if everyone's fucked up, I'm going to be the one that fixes it.
Yeah. It was just like small stuff, right? These and this when we talk about coding our brain, there were so many tiny moments. Like I would wake up and feed the dogs in the morning, so it was like one less thing for my mom to do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so you would get up early and you would feed the dogs so your mom wouldn't have to do it.
Yeah.
And then what did she say to you?
No idea. It was like just part of my morning routine because I was the only one that didn't sleep through the alarm. So I was like a big like not anymore because I'm a DJ now, but back in the day I was a morning girly, loved waking up in the morning. I would wake up like singing at like 6 a.m., like loving life. And I would go into my sister's room and wake her up singing because she slept through the alarm all the time. And then she was always late to school. So when she started driving, I wanted to ride to school and I wasn't going to be late. So I
Mm,
would make sure that we got there on time. And if she was late, I would take the bus and she'd be late to school. I said, I'm not going to be late. You're on your own, kid. So, but the point is like that's a lot of like the small stuff that I did every day that made me feel purposeful, helped my mom out, created less pressure for my mom, and that became sort of like, I guess, like, what do you call it? Like a conductor for the
yeah.
family. Like these are like, hey, we're getting up, you get up, we got to leave now. If you're not leaving now, I'm going without
But
you. But I was
who
sort of helping.
taught you that? When did you learn that you had that influence? Like, that's fascinating.
I don't know. I think just probably along the way, my mom was like, "Can you wake your sister up?" And I probably was like, and it was like, "Can you feed the dogs?" Sure. And I told Amina this earlier today was that she talked about like when did you first feel a sense of responsibility and when did you feel that responsibility was a way that you felt seen.
Yeah.
And I one of the core memories I had was my sister was babysitting and my sister is ADHD. I have a very neurodivergent family. And so I she was asleep, sort of asleep at the wheel babysitting. Like she was watching the TV and so when my mom came to like pick her up or whatever, she was like, this can't happen. This is like so irresponsible. She's not doing her job. She's like, next time, Denise, you go with her. And so I would go with my sister to her babysitting things. And then one time she was unavailable and I babysat for this family and did a better job. So I became the babysitter, and just want to say for the record, I was like 11 years old and my sister was like 13. And I ended up taking her babysitting jobs because I was more responsible. But I think for me, it was like, oh, I'm good at this. And then also, it was there was money attached to it. So it was also like,
Mm,
oh, I'm getting paid to do this. I'm good at this. And then money means freedom. Money means more autonomy. Money means I can buy the clothes I want. At 11 years old, that's what I was thinking about. And
yeah.
so I think there was a lot of positive reinforcement next to that idea.
Wow. Yeah. And so, like, if somebody wants to map what is their neuromotivation strategy, that's the place to start. Like, these stories are not small. They're fundamentally huge because this got mapped in your brain and got coded at like 100% more magnitude than something would get coded today. And so this little spark of like Denise solves the problem by being responsible, by getting it done. And that gets so, and so the belief is like, if I do, what was the belief actually that you developed at that point?
What was the belief? I don't know. Can you give me some ideas?
Yeah. So, for example, if somebody says like, "Hey, I'm super curious, like I want to map my strategy for XYZ." First thing we want to do is just free form and play and start getting like, what are the memories you have? And in your case, we discussed this actually at length. It's like, what are the memories you have where you knew that it was good to execute? And you shared the babysitting example. You shared an example with me years ago where you were like, "Hey, like I manifested makeup," and maybe you could share that example in a moment.
Yeah, everyone, this is so crazy. This is so silly. But I think I was like not 10 or something or 12. And there was like an Urban Decay eyeshadow palette that I needed, had like circled it in my magazines, was like, this is mine. And my dad flew a lot for work, he traveled a lot. So he came home one day from traveling and he was like, "Oh, Denise," like, and he gave it to both me and my sister, but it was mine. And he was like, "Oh, Denise, like, and Brittany, I got this guy next to me on the plane bought this for you guys." And it's at the time, like, who's buying duty-free stuff on the plane? I mean, like, it's still a very rare circumstance, but like, they used to have these magazines on the plane where you could purchase items while flying. And so this stranger bought this the exact like Urban
Wow.
Decay makeup palette I wanted and gave it to my dad to give to me.
Wow.
And it just felt so crazy that it was the exact thing that I had wanted. Like, what are the odds? And I just felt like that was a clear signal that I must have like dreamt
Yeah.
that into reality.
Yeah. So like that's a beautiful example, right? So we just want people to be like dream. Like, did you manifest an Urban Decay makeup palette? Did you save your sibling from a job or whatever? And so you start thinking about this, and it's like, what is the meaning I made up about this? Our brains are just like meaning making machines. So like the meaning you must have made up is like, my actions matter. If I want something done, I have to take action. And the action that you took for the manifestation is that you got really clear on what you want. The action that you started to take around the babysitting is like, hey, like, I'm not going to fall asleep. I am going to stay awake. I'm going to take care of these kids. And these kinds of experiences code our brain into what's safety, what's reward, and what's possible. So you had a lot of possibility as a child growing up around getting it done, getting it done. Maybe one of the ways that you got love and attention was through being really good, by being the good one, you know?
So I figured out what I think the beliefs are. So the first one is like, I'm good at work, which then I believe I attached a piece of my worth to productivity, which is why it was so hard for me to unravel from, the capitalist mentality. And so just to give people like some color, I might have talked about this on the podcast before, but I had 3 jobs in high school. I got to college. I interned every single semester. I started working full time my senior year of school, and
Oh
then
my
like
God.
launched into a full blown big career.
Yo.
And yeah, it's only in the past 4 years that I've started changing and designing how I work.
Hmm.
And so much of that was that's where I felt, I think, powerful and had agency, was like, I'm good at this and I can excel here. And so that's where I put a lot of my identity and value in
Mm-hmm.
myself based on those early experiences. And so when we talk about the shadow side, is that the way that I was working clearly was unsustainable and a little bit nutso. I don't know, having 3 jobs in high school is probably not what I would recommend to
Yeah.
most people.
Yeah. I mean, look, like you're not wrong. Like in many Western societies, modeling a masculine way of execution and getting it done and speed and consistency are rewarded. So not only were you getting that reward through your family system, you were getting that reward externally too. And so, like, it became so, so automatic for you. And so when I brought it up to you, I know that you were like, huh? Like, what do you mean? I fucking
Yeah.
just do. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, let's take a step back. Like, what is the origin of the coding? You know, and I have it in front of me too. And it's like the very first thing we did is we looked at the origin code. And then I noticed something really interesting that I didn't put in it. But your brain is so fascinating because you get curious and then you decide. And then as soon as you make that decision, your brain takes it seriously and then you move. And I think the seriously part is what I am deeply, deeply fascinated about because most people get curious, dream, discuss, like, visualize, plan, avoid, and then try to get it all done last minute or whatever, you know? But for you, I'm curious about this decision making strategy is so fucking strong for you. Like that is very, very powerful. I think it could teach people a lot because the curiosity is something we all have as human beings. But I want to know where you go from curiosity to decision because once that decision is made, nobody is going to guess whether Denise gets it done. And that is the big thing that we want, everyone to understand is like all motivational speakers talk about this is like, decide, claim, achieve, get clear, but the decision is the piece. We don't get what we want. We get who we are being. And who we are being comes from our decisions.
Yeah. Uh, I want to talk about this in a way that I hope will make sense. So, my decision making power comes a lot from intuition. So, I've had enough life experiences to trust that when I have that spidey sense that I'm curious enough to take it, like there's something where I'm like, I'm curious about a lot of things. Like, I don't move on everything that I'm curious about. As you know, you've known me long enough. I always have business ideas or ideas that I'm pitching you. I'm not necessarily like taking action on all of the ideas that I have. I'm taking actions on the ones that feel most resonant in my body. And so in the earlier stage of my life, I would classify that as instinct. I think intuition is the evolved expression of instinct. And so my instinct would, in the ways that I worked when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of time to make decisions. So I would just make them trusting that instinct and would see how they would play out. And so the ways that we can get to know our intuition is through things like that, like small experiments and seeing what feels good and doesn't feel good. We can also use decks of cards to understand and affirm our intuition. There's a lot of different ways to get to know yourself and your intuition, but I think I had a series of like trial by fire. For example, the babysitting. I was thrown into a situation where I had no experience and I excelled, right? I took the job from my sister. And so there was a lot of moments like that. Like I was offered in high school, one of the jobs I had was to choreograph my dance studio's theater productions. And I said yes, obviously. I had never choreographed for a 50-person ensemble before in my life. I just was curious about it and I was like, I want to do this. And then I ended up enjoying it. And so I put myself in circumstances where I did not have experience or knowledge and I excelled. Or I didn't excel, or I had bad experiences. But both of those things I learned from, and the courage to do something scary or say yes to something allowed me to then figure out in my body what's a good choice and a bad choice. And then over time, that became more intuitive. And so now it's like I know what feels resonant in my body as the right next step. And if it doesn't, then I don't do it. But I also want to clarify that I take time to assess. I don't make decisions immediately. I usually sit on something, sleep on it, give it a couple days, so I take time to make those choices now to really make sure I'm clear on what is actually right for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That definitely like I've in observation of people, like I don't know if I've shared this with you, but I looked into habits and I did this longitudinal study of like the past 100 years of habit formation. I mean, basically, neuroscientists at Stanford studied habit formation. And so, like, in the past 100 years, people have been like wrong about habit formation a lot. And so, like, in earlier on, people used to say, like, just do what Denise does, and then you can build the habit. And I want to just distinguish the habits between the modeling. And so, like, 50, 60 years go by, we still don't make a lot of progress. Neuroscientists found that actually it takes between 18 days and 250 days to build a habit. Now, why does it take some people 18 days and why does it take other people 250 days? Like, what's the freaking distinction? It's not motivation, it's not willpower, it's not even intelligence, it's not even a skill issue. The people that succeed in building the habit from an 18-day mark have less of this one specific thing, and it's called limbic friction. I talk about this all the time. Limbic is the emotional part of your brain, friction is resistance. So the people that have less emotional resistance to something build habits faster. Now, the people that are in the 250-day camp that fucking just take forever to build habits, they will self-criticize and say, what's wrong with me? I can't do it. Oh my God, what's wrong? What they don't realize is that their emotional resistance is higher than their desire to implement the habit. So, in other words, your brain is designed to keep you safe, not make you happy. So, even if the change is good, even if the habit is good, your brain is going to squash it because it feels threatened by it. And so, the distinction with you and your execution, you had so much stacking evidence that it was safe for you to execute and move and just take action. And take action for a lot of people what they don't understand, and I think they really hurt themselves with, is they just have, limbic friction. They have emotional resistance to this thing. And like we can laugh about it and joke about it, but actually, like, you have tremendous empowering beliefs around getting things done. Now, that can be harmful when we don't know how to shut it down. But I think that's a really good place for people to just be able to model and be like, what are Denise's two or three like empowering beliefs that, and what do you do like when you have that resistance come up? Because actually, from the time that you think about something and then you sleep on it and figure it out and then decide, after you decide, there's really no stopping you. I think it takes other people a really long time to decide because they're going back and forth through the emotional resistance, through limbic friction. And so I just feel like it's so important for people to realize what those empowering beliefs are, but also like your execution strategy. What are the steps you take when you want to do something after you
Yeah.
decide?
Yeah, one of the things I've gotten better at, which I want to encourage everyone to do, is, to treat ourselves the way we treat our friends. So when I get a rejection email, instead of taking that personally, I take it as this person is not understanding my vision. And that's just one person.
Wow.
And I've started to train myself. And obviously, I have a complicated history with rejection that, like, for a long time, I would bulldoze through and be like, they don't get it. They're not the demo, move on. And then I hit such a sheer
Wow.
volume of rejection, really took me out. And I had a really hard time with negative feedback over the past couple years that I've slowly now am coming out of and I'm
Mm,
sort of transmuting. But I think all of us, right? Like we think we're the main character of our own movie, right? We're the main character of our lives. And most of us think like the world revolves around us and our narrative and our story. And I've just realized like everyone's overwhelmed. No one has bandwidth. Everyone's working too hard, doing too much, trying to juggle all the different aspects of life, and especially now, the current grief of just the world that we
yeah.
live in. And so you depersonalize it. Like it's
Mm,
not really about you or your work, and it's just about who has the bandwidth and who has the passion.
yeah.
And that is something that I think was helpful for me, was understanding that, because I forced a lot of stuff in my career very early on. I was like, as you
Mm.
said, nothing's gonna stop me. And I would end up in a lot of work scenarios that like weren't the right place for me.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, go where you're wanted. You go to the places that's like a litmus test. The people that don't get it
Yeah.
are probably not the right. And one of the other things I've learned, what I've talked about before, is my DJ career was really the healthy version of this because it was something that I was curious about, love, put energy into, but I never forced it.
Mm,
Whereas early in my career, I was forcing a lot because I was like, oh, I'm just going to get it done. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to make it happen, make it happen. And there's a level of, I believe, ease that should come with your life and the work that you do. And I was, when you talk about like resistance, I was choosing a lot of work pathways that were gratuitously resistant
mm,
versus choosing the pathway that felt easy. Because part of being like, I'm good at work and work is hard and forcing myself to get things
mm,
done in challenging, stressful environments,
mm,
I think that I knew I could do it, so I was like, "It's fine," not realizing that there was a path for me
mm,
with less friction that would
mm.
allow me to but have more ease in my work.
Yeah. That makes total sense, dude. I read this book so many years ago called The Four Agreements, and he talks about like
Yep.
the four ways of just agreeing, like be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, and he lives by that truth. And I feel like I heard your four agreements. Like I feel like you
Yeah.
just said it and I didn't record all of it, but that's really fascinating because if people have a hard time with rejection, the steps that you're offering are the four agreements to run it through their brain. Because if they don't have that belief, somebody could say, well, what would Denise believe? Right? What would be the framework she uses, or what would be the Dalai Lama's framework, or whatever? We can borrow people's frameworks,
Yeah.
and then ask ourselves, what would it take for me to embody that? And that's a step of emotional modeling, which is really the crux of execution. People think that it's a strategy thing or it's a right brain, left brain thing, but it's really not. Like, I know that's hard to hear for people because they're like, I'm just like type A, I just go, 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 get it done. The type A people have just had more dopamine and reward system cadence around getting shit done because of anxiety. And I know that's not a popular belief structure, but maybe they were also skilled at it. But it doesn't necessarily mean like that somebody that isn't type A can't get things done. But the belief that they have is because I'm not XYZ, I shouldn't even start. And that's the emotional resistance. So, actually, the way to overcome emotional resistance is to be able to name it, you know? And I would love to hear your four agreements again because I thought they were so good. And I feel like people need to like write this shit down and like borrow that. And then I actually want to share, like, what the fuck do we do when we get caught in ourselves? And I do this all the time too, by the way. I'm like a highly sensitive, deeply emotional fucking human being. I get caught in my feelings all the time, and I just like accept that about myself. But then I run it through a framework, you know?
Yeah. That's an important point, which is that we all spiral. We all have moments
Yeah.
of doubt, and I've had many existential crises over the past 4 years, wondering if anything I'm doing is going in the right direction, and those are real feelings.
Yeah.
As you said, like, part of we talk about, like, depersonalizing it or talking to yourself how you would talk to a friend,
Hmm.
is that I might have a day, a week, where I am just wondering if any of it matters, right?
Hmm.
I don't try and live there. When you're an entrepreneur or an artist, it's really about the process, and that
Hmm.
process is made up of tiny little building blocks, little
Hmm.
daily steps day by day.
Hmm.
When you look at people, the arc of people's career, it's not like shiny milestone after shiny milestone after shiny milestone. And like maybe it is. And for those people, my next question would be like, are they fulfilled? Are they happy? Or are they chasing every next shiny milestone?
Hmm.
And so I try and just get back to process and
Hmm.
like the joy of it and say, like, Denise, you believe in yourself fiercely, that like you want to do something that matters in this world, that's important to you, and like you are doing something that matters, but beyond that, like, you can't control everything else. All
Yeah.
you can do is build the tiny block on top of the
You
block.
just said something so powerful and important that I think basically sums up the entire conversation.
I'm waiting, jaw open, bated breath.
You said I believe in myself. And that's really the main distinction between people that can execute consistently and not. And because of all the experiences you had as a child that you beautifully explained around babysitting and manifestation and feeding the dog and not missing and not being late to work, like that all gave you self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is this belief in yourself that I matter, I have the ability to do it. And that distinction that you shared is probably like the biggest differentiator around execution, success, completion. That is the fundamental single most important capacity that someone can build when they're thinking about doing something, not doing something, getting it done. Do I fucking
That's
believe
right.
that I matter? Does my voice matter? Like, will
Yeah.
anyone care? Like, that is the question we have to answer when we feel stuck, truly.
I agree. It's so true. It's also self-trust, because
Oh,
I have a lot of friends who will get, rejection emails, and it makes them feel really bad about themselves, and I relate to that, but I also make a point of being like, that is not a bearing on your dream, on who you are or what you want out of life. That
yeah.
is one email. And it's so easy for us to get off kilter when we don't get the validation that we want when
Yeah.
we're pursuing a purpose or a dream. You made me think of an anecdote while we were talking, which was since I was 12, I knew I wanted to go to NYU. I wanted to be in Manhattan. That was really important to me. I was not a straight A student. I did fine, but I was definitely not a straight A student. I was not on the top edge of the SATs. I'm a very experiential learner and I'm a very
Yeah,
curious
same.
person, but
Hmm.
I'm not like a academic in the same way
Hmm.
that the testing system,
Hmm.
would
Yeah,
suggest.
yeah.
And so when I was applying to college, my guidance counselor basically discouraged me from applying to NYU.
Wow, no way.
It's like, you need to apply to a safety school. Like I don't know
What?
if you're going to get in there.
No.
And I said, you're wrong. I said, I am meant to go to that school. I am of that
But
school.
how did you know?
And I think
Like
you're
how did you have the courage and know that to defy authority like that? Like, what did you believe?
because when I went to New York City, I knew I was meant to be in New York City.
But 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 distill it in your body and in your thoughts. Distill it, like close your eyes and think about that moment. And like when she said that, what ran through your mind?
Rage.
Okay,
Rage.
so that's really important. Like your motivation is I'll fucking show them. That's one way
Yeah,
you
it
get
was
things done.
you
Okay.
you don't know me. I was like, you're playing small because as your job as a guidance counselor is to get a certain amount of acceptance rates
Mm,
for your school.
mm,
You want to play it safe. And she also, didn't want me to be disappointed, right? My heart was set on this thing that she felt was
mm-hmm,
unattainable. And I said, no, I don't think it is. And so because of that, I started talking to people that had gone to NYU and I got the tea. And basically, they were like, you should meet your local rep. Your local rep for the university is the first person that will okay your application and pass it on up. And then as
whoa.
it goes up, if someone says no, that person can say, well, I know her and I think she's a fit, even though her grades and her SATs might be lower on the average. And I knew that for me, because I was not the consummate student on paper, that I was going to have to put a face to the application because if they met me, they would understand.
Mm.
If they just read my application, yeah, I probably wouldn't get in. So what did I do? I went to every single college fair that this man, and I was like, hello, me again. And I got in.
Mm. That's so funny because I knew I wanted to go to NYU when I was like also like in ninth grade or whatever. So I guess 14, 15. And I also got in too. But I didn't tell a fucking soul. I just applied to grad school. It was the only grad school I applied to. And I was like, oh, I want to go to New York. And I didn't go. I got accepted and I didn't go. I followed this line of work. But yeah.
But it was undergrad, so it's like everyone knew. It was very competitive too because I went to high school outside of Manhattan. So there's a lot of people applying because it was close to home and there was a lot of people with better grades than me. So it was a bit of a controversy because everyone knew like there were people that had better grades but they didn't get in.
Yeah.
And I was
Wow.
like, because they're not embodying the
Yeah.
spirit.
I think like also like I'm so enjoying this conversation because I was able to map what I believe is fascinating about you and like you're just validating it easily through your belief structures and I just feel like okay, like Denise believes in herself. She believes that her voice matters. If somebody rejects her, she depersonalizes it and then she goes and takes action. You find clarity through action. And like when I did your neurological model, it's like you don't get a reward system by thinking about it. You get a reward system and you get an additional dopamine and clarity to finish. And so the big message here is like it's okay to start. It's just okay to start. Like a lot of, James Clear says a lot of times people optimize for completion and end results, but we don't look at the process. There was a guy he described who lost 100 pounds by going to the gym for 2 minutes for the first weeks. And like he went to the gym, he'd do an exercise and go home, and people would be like, "You're nuts! Like, what the fuck are you going?" Like the hardest part is like getting to the gym. Like, why are you leaving after 2 minutes, right? But he had to train his body to just get his ass to the fucking gym. Then after 2 weeks,
Yeah.
after 21 days, after he could just get to the gym, then he increased the exercise. And he lost 100 pounds over a period of time just by following the 2 minute rule. And you do the 2 minute
Mhm.
rule naturally. So, the big takeaway that I feel so passionate about, which is like, you do this so naturally, but if we could teach your listeners and the world about this, is like, you naturally do the 2 minute rule. You find so much belief and safety in this idea of just getting started. You don't need the whole business plan. You don't need perfection. You don't even need to know what the outcome is. In fact, you don't let yourself know the end result. You have an idea, but you start, and through the process of starting and through the process of finishing a phase of it is when you can see the next phase and when you can see the
Yeah.
end result. And that is so, so interesting because most of us, and me included, I'm like, yo, well, like, you know what? I need to meditate on this. Like, I need to vibe on this. I need to feel into it because I'm such an emotional person. But just doing something for 2 minutes a day, just starting, taking the action, and borrowing like your belief structure of my voice matters. And if we don't know, if like you believe your voice matters, but for the people that don't believe their voice matters, it's like, well, why does somebody else's voice matter? That you can do easily. I could look at my niece who's like this, I love her, right? They're like 14 and 18 and they're so precious to me and their voices matter so much. So would I teach this to them? That's the big question we got to ask ourselves, is would I teach my niece your voice doesn't matter? No. Okay, well then how can I borrow that? Modeling is also about borrowing people's empowering beliefs. Like, this is actually helpful because if ever I feel stuck, I'm like, okay, like, why does my voice matter? Like, borrow this from Denise, for example. There's no shame in that, but we as a society are so set up to not copy. We're not copying what you're doing. We're copying the structure of thinking because a lot of people in society are so afraid of not being original. Like, I'm not going to copy this person. I'm going to be myself and blah, blah, blah. But really, we often don't know who ourselves is. We're just a conglomeration of our belief structures. And so, if you think you want something, rather than starting from scratch or freezing, let's borrow people's sequence. Let's borrow people's belief structures to get it done.
We all know that nothing we're doing today is wholly original, right? We're sort of
Yes,
iterating
yes,
upon
exactly.
ideas. And so even when I write things, I'll always cite the person who maybe spurned the initial thought of this essay, or on my Substack, I do it all the time of like, why do I care about this? Where did this come from? What are the research and inputs that created this point of view? That's very
Yeah.
important because we don't have to feel like we're saying something wholly new. So your voice does matter because it's not about whether or not it's original. It matters that it's coming from you.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's like super female empowered, right? Because it's like we're not trying to put down the patriarchy, we're just owning our voice. And we're creating from the space of regulation and because we believe that a woman's voice matters, not because it's in comparison to the man. I learned about modeling early on from Tim Hallbaum and Robert Dilts, and they were saying, they're researchers, teachers, educators, and they were saying, don't ask people what they think, observe the sequence of their behavior. And I think it sounds the same, but it's very different. So anytime we're looking at starting something, the first thing that we want to do is figure out, like, what's my belief structure, like what do I believe about myself in regards to this project. And the second thing is like, who does this well, where can we borrow
Mhm.
empowerment. And then the third step is like, start, do the 2 minute rule. And like, you do this so intuitively in these steps exactly this way. You monitor, like, am I committed to this? What's my body saying to me? What's my intuition? Does this matter? Step one, like, you do that. Then step two is you assess ancient wisdom, history, business strategy, but other people. Like, how are they doing it, right? Like, let's look not at what they're doing, we're looking at how they're doing it. What's the sequence? And then third, when you decide from those two steps, you take the action and you go. And for some of us, and I'm definitely, can relate to this, is like, for some of us that can't just decide and go, The 2-minute rule, like, is the difference that makes the difference. And so if we can't be Denise and like getting shit done because you've had so much neural reinforcement around it, we can borrow it and do micro steps because you had so much safety in getting shit done. And if for some of us that don't have that nervous system safety, we can get it in little drips, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's your formula that anybody can follow, like anybody, and like start.
Can we break down the loop that you created,
Yeah,
like the flow chart of things just so people can hear them? I think it'd be helpful to be like, okay, what is this loop that I'm running and what are those steps?
yeah. So your loop is super interesting. And like when I discovered it, I texted it to you immediately. Your brain is a self-generating engine, Denise. So the Denise loop is inspiration, followed by commitment, followed by structure, action, completion, and then the latter is the vision. And then you go into the next cycle. So you're wired for clarity through motion. You don't wait for the idea to appear. You start and clarity arrives as a result. That's how your dopamine and visual cortex talk to each other. Once you finish, your brain relaxes and opens the channel for new imagery, new direction, new energy. It's not hustle, it's intelligent chemistry. And I just feel like that's the crux of your process. You know, and in my notes, I wrote, this can be exhausting. This can be exhausting because it's all on you. And I think, like, what I wrote later, the early coding that you got, like the difficulty around that is if I stop, maybe I'll lose my edge. And again, I'm not sure. This is human behavior assessment that if somebody has such a strong case of being good at execution, one might believe this. I'm not saying this is particularly
Yeah.
you, but it's up to me. Love equals responsibility, which is why you've said to me, like, if my friend is fucking up in some way, I feel like it's up to me to name it. I gotta say it. I gotta voice it, right? And so vision follows work. So what I wrote is that they're not flaws, they're leftover safety programs. The work now is to let your body know you're safe even when you're not performing.
Yeah. And so just to clarify for people, when we talk to my friends, there is a level of like sort of codependency responsibility that I felt for other people that I had to unlearn because it was my need for control. Because a lot of this idea that I feel safety through execution is also was about control.
Yeah,
And so now we're in this phase where I'm keeping the good parts of this and losing the bad parts of
yeah,
this neural loop.
yeah,
And can we talk about integration,
yeah.
Amina?
So the one thing that comes up for me is there's this super, like, it's kind of a fancy word, right? It's called metacognition. What we're learning in human development is like in the beginning, IQ was like, you know, the God that people pray to, like IQ, IQ, IQ. Then later we discovered that EQ matters a lot. And now what we're learning is metacognition is super important. Metacognition is the ability to observe an urge without acting on it. Like I have a metacognition about something. And I was saying for you, like the integration is to have somatic curiosity and to notice when tension rises, you ask yourself this one single question: am I chasing clarity or avoiding chaos? For you, part of why you executed so hard and so fast and so quickly was you were avoiding chaos. You were the still, steady stream in a chaotic home that doesn't have to run you anymore. And so you can notice the urge. Like I have a client that I work with, and this person attacks people as a way to stabilize themselves. And what we're working on with her is rewiring her brain to be able to express rather than attack. I mean, this is a very serious case, but what she's doing is she's noticing the urge and sitting with it. Like like if you have this desire of, oh, I gotta act, oh, I gotta do this, oh, I gotta whatever, you take 3 minutes 2 times a day, 6 minutes total in your 24 hours, whatever percentage of your day that is, very small percentage. And you just observe your bodily sensations of wanting to take that action, but you don't. And
Yeah.
what that tells your nervous system is that you don't have to act. as a form of safety, you have choice. And I think that that is a very simple way for you to continue to integrate this loop of constantly going, like, and obviously having some daily rituals of like micro reflections that I thought would be so good for anyone is if you were wired to execute because work was hard and you had to do the hustle thing and whatever, it's like, what felt easy today? you know and
Yeah.
let your brain, we have this thing in our brain called the reticular activating system. So like when you're on the highway, you notice like all the red cars driving by. That's your reticular activating system pulling those red cars to you. That's what pulled that makeup palette to you. And so one thing that you could do at the end of your day, like before you go to bed, is like notice like what felt easy today. Like how did I achieve, like what was easy for me, and just notice the feeling of that and let that expand in your body. And actually, you can try it now before we close. Close your eyes and notice, like, you just like drop your shoulders and like relax and steady your breathing. And you notice, like, what felt easy. And feel what you feel in your body as you think of this ease. And if this ease were an image, what would be the image? And if this ease were a color, like what would be the color? And now wrap yourself in this color like a warm blanket and attach your favorite temperature to this. And just exclusively focus on this ease. And as you inhale, you're breathing in the ease. And as you exhale, you're releasing the struggle. And just from your mind's eye, recognize what a mantra could be of like, I am safe to have ease. And so as you inhale safety, you just like relax into this ease. And then you just bring this ease into your heart and you visualize your day, like moving through your day, just being easy. Things come to me with ease. And feel what you feel and just bring that into your heart, and then just carefully drop your shoulders again and open your eyes. And that's a perfect integration. You see, the hardest part, by the way, how do you feel?
Feel at ease.
Yes, good. But like the hardest part is to distinguish what the core challenge is and what the core superpower is. And what we discovered for you is that you were so driven for execution, almost out of fear of just, like being the stable one. And so now, like the fact that we found the root of the challenge and found the root of the superpower, the integration is taking the superpower but replacing it with something that's updated. And if you just do that
Yeah.
every night for 31 days, just this took nothing. It took like 2 or 3 minutes. And you just at
Yeah.
night, you bring this ease and you flow into it. That starts to create what's called neurogenesis. It's not rewiring your brain, it's adding new neural pathways that don't exist because you don't have this pathway yet as stable as maybe somebody else, right? None of us really do, to be honest, but let's just say. Right? Neurogenesis is the idea of building new pathways where they don't exist. You're not rewiring your brain for something, you're actually building a new pathway. And that's like integration.
I love that. So before we close out, can you just give us an idea of how someone that maybe, is moving towards more execution in their lives, what is language we could use in a meditation integration for them instead of saying, okay, I'm imagining ease, what would we imagine?
Yeah, exactly. So it would be the ease, but it would be the ease of fucking executing. Oftentimes, people have
Mm,
a neural response that creates friction and flooding in the brain, which is why we get overwhelmed and sabotage. Sabotage is just a fear of moving forward. That's really it. Sabotage, the definition of sabotage is purposely pausing, purposely stopping forward movement. Us that have a hard time with execution, We want to just imagine ourselves, because you can execute, you just want it to, be easy of coming to you. Other people want to have the ease of getting it done. So like I would just
Yeah.
say like do the same exact exercise, but watch yourself like easily finishing, easily completing, moving from one task to the next successfully. And just watch, what does that feel like? What does that smell like? What is the temperature? Use all your senses to activate your brain. Emotions are the Viagra for your neuroreceptors to connect, literally. So use that emotion. Like this is the neuroscience of manifestation. Use your, use smell, use breath, use sound of like, what it'll be like if I could actually have an idea and complete it. Oh my God, I would feel thrilled. I would be jumping up and down and then see.
Yeah. Okay. That tracks. Okay. Good. I'm so happy we could give that to people on either side of the spectrum to incorporate into their lives.
I love it. And I love that you were generous enough to share your background with people, the good and the difficult, so that they may learn something in modeling you. That's generous.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, it came up that people were curious about it, and I hope it's helpful at the very minimum, wherever you find yourself on this, I guess, spectrum or median of execution.
Yeah.
I hope this is really valuable. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Amina, for walking us through the science and the mapping and doing this with us. It's so appreciated. And I think it's really going to help people because it's not just about habits, as we know, it's not just about motivation. It is about our behaviors and our decisions.
Mm.
And so you're giving people such
Yeah.
a blueprint to figure this out for
Yes.
themselves. So thank
Oh
you.
my God. And
Is generous.
thank you. And the last thing I would just say is never ever beat yourself up. And of course, it's impossible. I do it all the time. We all do it as human beings, like everyone does it. But if you can pause for a moment and say, where do I not feel safe? Literally, and just answer that question, I think it'll resolve a lot in execution because execution is not anything other than a safety mechanism.
Thank you so much for listening. If you do like listening, it would mean the world to us if you could subscribe or review the podcast anywhere that you watch or listen to the podcast. It really helps with the algorithm to share this with the world. I want to give a special thank you to young Spielberg and Sarah Yarkin for their beautiful work on our opening jingle, Dana Boulos for her help with the beautiful art, and to all of you for tuning in and keeping this dream alive. If you want to hear certain topics or from certain guests, please feel free to email us. We really, really want to hear from you and see how we can best support you. See you next time.